Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing part 40 of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights, where we're taking some look at the wonderful mods people have been making and compare them to their real life fossil counterparts. And today, you can see here we've got pretty much all dinosaurs today, which is quite fun. Not very often that happens, because you have a mix of pterosaurs and things like that. But we've got a lot of remodels, or paleo-accurate remodels, and then we've got a couple pretty cool new dinosaurs that we'll have a look at, and plus some one really cool non-dinosaur that I'm really excited to talk about. So we're going to be starting off today. We're doing some of the remodels, or paleo remodels, and this next one is done by Netraptor. So this is by Dryosaurus, or this is Dryosaurus. Here is our wonderful Dryosaurus, a wonderful little man's. So let's have a look and see what ones we can get a good look at. So this is our Dryosaurus. Let's have a look at you, since you're cool. But yeah, Dryosaurus actually didn't need too many edits, but I'll go through some of the edits that were probably most definitely made. We can start with the head. We'll start with the head here. We actually do not have an adult Dryosaurus known. So technically we don't actually know what an adult one would look like, but this is based off the juvenile. So, or sub-adult, you could say. So we can see some changes to the skull there, some extensions to the beak. You can see they've got lots and lots of keratin. A lot of reconstructions really underestimate a lot of keratin there, as you can see there. And then we have this kind of rounder skull there to accentuate it, and that big eye there. We do love that big eye. A big fan. They also have this like big spur thing coming out here. I forgot the technical name of it, but it's still quite cool. You can see some changes to the neck there. Quite a long spin to the neck and quite long arms as well. You can see they've got these big hands. I'd say they've probably actually been shrunk a little bit because they didn't have very big hands. These guys were actually quite early in the ornithopod family tree, pretty much. Similar to things like Qianzhousaurus, things like that. So they probably didn't really have much ability of walking on all fours. And then we can see that body's also been greatly rounded. These guys had a very oval-shaped body, from what we know. Very oval, and then you have the, because these guys are bird-tip dinosaurs, they have the ischium and the pubis kind of poking out like that, which really gave them that really round look. And they've got that long oval body. And then you can also see here quite long legs as well. These guys are kind of very famous for these long legs. If you've seen them in Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, there was the little ones running around. But people really do underestimate how big these guys are. I think some estimates have put them at like 300 kilos or so very big animals. And then you have these long legs, and they have these even longer tails. And that's probably been extended because Jurassic Park often loves to give the dinosaurs tails that are far too short. But yeah, really awesome. I'm definitely a big fan of this Dryosaurus Netraptor, coming through with some remakes and remodels to really accentuate everything. A big fan. So we're going to let them walk off and do their thing. Netraptor is coming at it again. Let's see if he'll move out the way. So, okay, everyone's out the way now. So this is Styracosaurus, also done by Netraptor. So this is a wonderful animal. Let's have a look at you. I know this one looks most like the base one. Have a look at you, because you look pretty dashing right there, I'll be honest. But let's have a look at you. So we can see some changes to these wonderful guys here, especially some changes to the skull. A lot more rounded and things like that. These guys had very large nasal cavities and all that. And I really like the horn. Some people like to reconstruct it like a little bit more pointing upwards, but there's definitely a lot of keratin. Some estimates put like up to about I think an extra quarter or extra half of the length. So these guys probably had much longer spikes than we initially thought because of things like Borealis pelta. We have a good idea of when the bone core ends and how much keratin is on that. So about 1.5 is typically seems to be the average there. So really nice to see this really nice big horn going on, and I like the shape of it. Really, really cool. You can see that wonderful skull and that wonderful frill. See all the little dangly bits, the ossicles on the frill there. And then you have these really large ones at the top here that really give that characteristic look of Styracosaurus. And we actually have some Styracosaurus specimens that these hadn't developed properly, so they almost have like extra spikes. So it's very cool to think about like how many, like almost gives like an individual look to them, which is really, really cool. And you can see how these dinosaurs develop as they grew. And then you can also see here they've got that neck here, very short neck, like most other ceratopsians. And then they've got these large, bulky front legs, as per always. Let's have a look. Large, bulky legs, as per always, to help support that big head. But we can also see there's also the nails on all five. Typically, the last two should only have, or digits 4 and 5 should only have no nails at all. But I guess it's just texture edits as well. But looks nice regardless. You can see the foot actually does like look pretty good comparatively. It's other than the nails, it's actually pretty spot on. The little hoof thing going on, really, really cool. And then you have that big round body that all the ceratopsians have, very round body, and they have the Qianzhousaurus as well that comes around like that, which is quite interesting. And then you have these large hips and these big wide thighs that these guys have, very, very cool. Come down to their feet with the 4 nails on there, and they got also like a little bit of a fleshy pad under there to help support their weight, very similar to elephants and tortoises and things like that. And then we can see here the tail's probably been greatly shortened. Unlike most of the animals in the game, I think the ceratopsians are often given tails that are too long. These guys are kind of known for having very, very short tails, but I still really like how this guy's come out. Really nice edit, nice short tail, really, really cute. I do love this edit. I think Netraptor's really done a wonderful job giving this guy another pass through. It looks awesome. So, yep, we're going to let them walk off and do their thing. Another paleo edit done and dusted. And now we got another one from Netraptor. We have got Herrerasaurus. Wonderful, guys. Let's see if we can get a good look. Any of you posing for me? We'll have a look at you. You're doing the best pose. But he can see here some of the changes to the face here. They did have that very boxy face. The original Jurassic World Evolution one actually does fit quite well to what we know, although a little bit exaggerated, but we can see their head's been changed quite a bit. These guys have a very interesting skull there. They almost got these big accentuated brows here. It's almost like vaguely crocodilian, which I kind of like. But remember, these guys are also quite early on the dinosaur tree. Some people don't even know if they're kind of almost sometimes considered their own group of like Herrerasauridae, which is like before the split between, or just after the split, or just before the split of the other saurischians, so like the sauropods and the theropods. So it's a little bit complicated. Some people consider these more closely related to sauropods. To the theropods, it's just taxonomy being taxonomy, I guess. But yeah, I really like that skull, you can see, and they got the big teeth there. They do have some extra big teeth, and I imagine, like most other crocodilians and dinosaurs, they probably grew them continually throughout their lives and keep losing them. So they didn't have to worry about dental care too much, hopefully. You can see that also longer neck there. Do have a bit of a long neck, and then we can see those arms here. As you see, as they run out and walk, it's not really with the animation, they kind of just stay still, because these have been decoupled from the arms, because the original game they kind of hold their arms very close to them and they have them in the kind of rabbit stance or the pronated stance, so like going ring ring ring. But these guys would obviously have their hands clapping all the time, as I keep mentioning. So this is the correct arm posture for these guys, but that's obviously been sacrificed for their animation. And you can see they're quite long arms there. Big fan of those long arms. I really do like them. I'll be honest, I think it's quite cool. And then you move on to that body. They've got that they've got almost like a very boxy body. You can see like it goes big around here, and then like almost like straight down, like a big angle here down to the pubis. And they have gastralia, which are also known as belly ribs, that go down here, helps with breathing and support and things like that. And then you also have these long legs. So you can see very similar to theropods, and very indicative of what dinosaurs would become. later in the Mesozoic. But these guys, as I mentioned, quite early in the dinosaur family tree. So kind of just the beginning of what dinosaurs would be. And then you also have this quite long tail. Really, really awesome. I do love them. It's amazing how like some small edits really does bring the animal out more and really makes them look more realistic. Especially from the Jurassic Park, very much like 90s style dinosaurs. And not really too bothered about the anatomy, but you can see it's pretty spot on. Definitely a big fan of these guys, so we're going to let them run off and do their thing. So let them run off. So next up, we're going to be moving on from new species, remodels. We're going to have a look at a new species, kind of a double whammy, which I'm quite excited to talk about. We have got here Sinusaurus. So Sinusaurus here was done by Rusha, I believe you say that. But Sinusaurus is a very interesting dinosaur. They are considered a close relative of Dilophosaurus or something like that. These guys are an extinct genus of theropod that lived during the early Jurassic period of China, and they've been found in Yunnan, China. They're a bipedal carnivore. They get about 5.5 meters long, about 18 feet, and estimated about 300 kilograms, or about 660 pounds. Their name comes from sanative, which is the Latin word for Chinese. So these are basically the Chinese lizard, and the scientific name Jurassicus versus Jurassic, which was the period that these rocks were originally thought to be from, but it turns out they're actually from the early Jurassic. And the holotype is known from two maxillae and some teeth and things like that. Teeth have been compressed. And over the years, there was things that referred to Sinusaurus, but turns out to be other things like sauropodomorphs, things like that. And one thing is, when they were originally described in about 1987, they were referred to as their own, as a species of Dilophosaurus, Dilophosaurus sinensis, which is kind of the Asian species, you could say, of Dilophosaurus. But in 2003, people studying them suggest that they're actually quite similar to those of like that. And as Sinusaurus was kind of named, it became a junior synonym, but most recently it's been split. So it's Sinusaurus sinensis is one species, and then the other one Utahraptor as well. So there's technically two species. And there was another species of dinosaur discovered, Qianzhousaurus analongbayoensis, I believe you say that. They was discovered and named 2015, but it was actually found to be a synonym of Sinusaurus jurassicus. So there's two species. There's Sinusaurus sinensis, which was originally Dilophosaurus, and then Sinusaurus triassicus, which is quite interesting. So as I mentioned, these guys were a relatively large theropod. They get about 5.5 meters long, or about 300 kilograms. So they're kind of big. And they're the only Dilophosaurid known from a complete brain case as well. And Cryolophosaurus, Dilophosaurus, Lepiosaurus, and Coelophysis cantonensis are known from partial brain cases. So that's quite interesting. And in terms of classification, they were originally thought to be a Coelophysaurid related to Dilophosaurus and Cryolophosaurus. But some things have changed there. Now they're considered more along the line. They're a tetanurans, so with the three fingers. So now they're closely related to things like Cryolophosaurus and Monolophosaurus. But the taxonomy there is always changing, and I know some people consider Dilophosaurus more closer to Tetanuridae as well, so they are still related to each other. And they're considered to be more basal in that regard. And even though they both have these dual crests, very similar to Dilophosaurus, don't really know their function, but they may have been used for displays and things like that. And in terms of feeding, we know that these guys have a deep notch, as you can't really see because of lips, but they do have that deep notch, very similar to Dilophosaurus in that regard. And they would have had large jaw muscles that potentially would have helped give powerful bites. So they have that narrow hooked jaw, and they would use that to kind of rip through flesh and things like that. And they actually may have had the feet very similar to modern vultures, which would allow them to help potentially rip prey apart if they're feeding on larger animals like sauropodomorphs that they would have lived with. So that's kind of a cool thing as well. And we actually have, in one specimen, we have evidence of a traumatic loss of teeth, which was where this, of the dental alveolus, which is where the socket of the jaw where the tooth held. And it's believed to have been remodeled after the jaw, so it's basically got this big injury and then the tooth wouldn't be able to grow back because the root itself was damaged. So it's really cool evidence of a pathology and showing that animals didn't have the best life out in the wild back in the early Jurassic. They had to deal with other animals hurting them and things like that. But in terms of the paleoecology, Sinusaurus thoracicus was found in China, and there's a few bones from the Sumerian stage of the Jurassic period, about 196 to 183 million years ago. And several other discoveries have been referred to, and another species was found, but it's actually found to be a poposaur. And some of these, the Cineris specimens, now referred to as just Sinusaurus, was found in the Dilophosaurus Formation, which was discovered in 1987, and was actually referred to like a early Jurassic, a little bit older, about 201 to 199 million years ago. And in terms of its fauna and habitat, the Dilophosaurus Formation kind of had a very interesting paleo environment, lots of therapsids and early crocodilians and lots of early reptiles, even some early thyreophorans, and ornithopods and prosauropods, or sauropodomorphs we technically say now, like Utahraptor and things like that, and other theropods like Qianzhousaurus and Dilophosaurus, and some many other interesting coelophysids and therapsids and dinosaurs that were really just starting to get prevalent after the end Jurassic extinction. So really, really cool, guys. Definitely a big fan of the Sinusaurus. Overwatch did a great job kind of giving us a really cool new dinosaur. Definitely do like these guys. You can see based almost like the Megaraptor, and really gives an interesting look. Definitely a big fan. So let them run off and do their thing. So next up, we have got, last but not least, for this group, we have got by Furlong, and who always makes a triumphant return, and Game Videos for Life. They have made a cosmetic to the new cosmetic, so another variant, very similar in the vein of like the Giganotosaurus, Dominion Giganotosaurus, and the Dreadnoughtus and Iguanodon, things like that. They made a new mod cosmetic, which is quite interesting. We'll have a look at that afterwards. So we've got a new cosmetic for the Dilophosaurus, which, as you'll see, makes it fit much better to the 2020 interpretation. So look at this wonderful guy here. I was looking for my cursor for a second, but we can have a look at these guys. So this is our new Dilophosaurus. So now it's the proper size. Because as I keep mentioning, Dilophosaurus was so much bigger than it was portrayed in the movie. And even in the novel, it was quite a bit bigger. Most recent estimates suggest that they're about 7 meters long or so, 6 or 7 meters. So very, very big. And then you can see some changes to the face here. This is the 2022 skin. This one is actually based off the novel skin. So if you guys are novel lovers, you love the original novel, you can have a skin that looked like that. But you can see some of the changes here. You can see that big notch there. The lips are not too accentuated, but you can kind of see it's quite cool. They do have lips, but you can see that big notch there that's quite obvious. And then you can see that bulkier skull that kind of comes out, and you can see that bigger crest that is very obvious and obviously quite awesome. Big fan of that. And then you can see that long neck. Dilophosaurus actually had quite a long neck, very interestingly. And these guys have got quite an oval body, as you see here, or quite a long body. And then you can see these arms come down. Because they're based, I believe the animation's based on the cryo, they can have the proper hand. So they are not pronated or supinated like the rabbits. They've got their hands facing each other like a palm, which is quite awesome. Really big fan of that. Oh, get down there. You see that big round oval body, and then you can see the longer legs there, and then you can see that longer tail, which I'm a big fan of. I'm really happy how this actually came out. So really nice to see cosmetic, and we'll get into how you change it as well. And I won't go into the species view, but I'll just show you the genomic library. So you can see that here, the novel skins. So here you have that. That's how that works for Furlong, and Furlong really did a wonderful job. There's more cosmetics coming that I'm really excited to talk about, and shows that you can actually, the modding is kind of like a little breakthrough, so you can have different versions of the same animal, very similar to how the original game kind of has the Iguanodon, things like that. But if we go into the genomics library, we'll use this as an example. So we're going to go to Dilophosaurus. So here we are. So we go modify genome. So very similar. So this is the 2022 variant. They call it that because it's from 2022 it was made. But you can also go the random, but you can have the default, which is your typical Jurassic Park version of Dilophosaurus, and you can obviously pick the skins and all that. And then you have your 2022 version, which is the download of the mod, and then you have all this, and then you have the kind of different versions you can have. And you can see it's also large as well. It's very similar to how the original game in the Camp Cretaceous DLC, where you have the Herrerasaurus. It's like a small version of the original Rhinosaurus, and then you have the Pierce the Qianzhousaurus, who's a large version of the Qianzhousaurus. And then you have that, and that's kind of how that's been applied here. So really, really cool. A lot of different edits and things like that. So that's Dilophosaurus. So yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan of these guys. And you can see there's been some new skins added. Obviously the novel one's pretty awesome. Really, really cool. So I think you guys would definitely like that if you want a more accurate Dilophosaurus in your game. So next up, we got another one from Netraptor. This is going to be our last Netraptor edit for today. We have got here the Qianzhousaurus. Qianzhousaurus, we say it. So here we have Qianzhousaurus. So a very interesting dinosaur. Its kind of common name is kind of refers to its long nose there. It's called the Pinocchio Rex. And Qianzhousaurus is a very interesting animal. It is a tyrannosaurid, as you can see by the two fingers. But they're in another group that didn't get so big and bulky like Tyrannosaurus and Tarbosaurus. They're in another group called Aleoramidae. So they're in a group that is kind of like Tyrannosaurs decided to become cheetahs rather than jaguars, kind of. Instead of becoming big, robust, jaguar-like, the big, robust, these guys kind of went the cheetah route. So these guys have very long snouts. They seem to be built very much for fast speed or just smaller, be able to better pursue prey. And then you can see that with the Pinocchio Rex here, a very long skull. Definitely a big fan of how this guy come out. And you can see that longer neck. They have pretty big arms for Tyrannosaurids, but they still have the characteristic two fingers that Tyrannosaurids have. And then you can see that long body there. And long legs, also a little bit better for running. And one thing as well is these guys actually quite look like subadult or juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex. So these guys are probably occupying quite a similar niche in their ecosystems, which is quite cool. And Aleoramidae would have lived with Tarbosaurus, and it seems like young Tarbosaurus didn't actually look very much like these guys. So it seems that subadult Tarbosaurus, when they're about that size, and Qianzhousaurus' relative Aleoramidae, would have occupied different niches in the next ecosystem of Asia. So that's quite cool. You can see that quite round body there. And yet the ischium and pubis come down here, and then you have that long tail, which is really, really nice. Definitely a big fan. Really, really awesome. You can see those big eyes as well. It really gives it quite a distinct look. Really, really cool. Big fan. So if you guys like your Qianzhousaurus, definitely a good mod to download. And Netraptor always does a wonderful job with these paleo edits. I'm really excited to see him take some of the species, because there's been actually some pretty cool animals made for Jurassic World Evolution 1. And I've seen them. They're pretty cool. I want to see like Jacopil. There's been a Jacopil mod. I really want to see what a Jacopil mod for Jurassic World Evolution 2. I think that'd be really cool to talk about, because it's such a new and interesting animal, and I want to talk about it, but I don't have a model yet, so we'll have to wait for that. But yeah, anyway, Netraptor, done a wonderful job. Really, really awesome. So next up, we have got, this one's done by Waffalo. We've got another Megaraptor mod. But I believe this one's based more on one of the Jurassic Park toys. I don't really follow Jurassic Park toys, so I don't really know what line it is, but I believe it is based off a Jurassic Park line toy, like a Mantel line. So here's a really wonderful Megaraptor here. It actually came out quite nice. I quite like the colors. I'm a big fan of red, and it looks nice. And it's got feathers. How can you not love feathers? And so I've talked about Megaraptor. There's been a couple Megaraptor mods. So Megaraptor is name means a large thief. These guys are a theropod dinosaur from the late Cretaceous of Argentina, and they were originally thought to be very much like a dromaeosaur. So the big hand claw that you see on the hand there was originally thought to be a dew claw or a toe claw from a dromaeosaur. But turns out these guys are actually more related to the Megaraptorans. So he's a not Megaraptorans, Megaraptorids. So it's our own group of which are either basal Coelurosaurs or basal Tyrannosaurids, depending on who you ask. But they were this very interesting group of carnivores that include Australovenator, the recently discovered Maip, also from South America, that were, instead of getting big heads like most other theropods, they got really big arms that they would have used to grapple prey and things like that. So as I mentioned, they is originally known from just that claw, and that claw is actually quite big. The bone core itself was about 30 centimeters long, and you'd imagine the keratin on top of that, that would have been like 45, even 50 centimeters long. So that would have been pretty interesting. And then there was a discovery of a front limb of this guy that actually shows that it was actually a hand rather than a foot claw. And some size estimates have been thrown around, have been estimated about 8 meters and about a ton. And they actually would have been even more recurved claws than those of like Spinosaurids. And as I mentioned in terms of taxonomy, the taxonomy is a little bit here or there, but these guys are typically considered now as a part of Megaraptoran. Originally they were thought to be Titanurans, or an Allosaurid, or a Caracontosaurid, but now we have more relatives of this guy, of the Megaraptorids, and then we now know what they actually are. And there's actually juvenile specimen actually been found to be discovery of also Gualicho, which is another Megaraptorid, actually shows that these guys were maybe not be a Tyrannosaurid, but maybe even like a basal Coelurosaur or Allosaurid. So really interesting. And with the discovery of Maip in 2022, so just last year, there seems to be two clades of Maniraptorans kind of existing that haven't been named yet. So there's kind of the clade A, which is the kind of all Megaraptorans except for Fukuya Reda and Australovenator, known in clade A. So this is basically anything out of South America. And then there's like this larger clade of South American Megaraptorids that include kind of Maip, Panastrodon, and Megaraptor, that they would have kind of lived in that group. And Megaraptor itself would have been claded within one of those, in between those groups, which is quite interesting. So it shows that taxonomy is always changing, things like that. And in terms of where it's found, the Megaraptoran is known from the late Ternarian and Oriclean stage of the kind of the later Cretaceous. So not like late Cretaceous, like the mid-late Cretaceous. And is from Argentina, so South American dinosaur. Other animals from this formation is like Fuculongosaurus, Balosaurus, Uninlagia, Pachygonicus, and Elegastrium. So includes things like Alverosaurs, sauropods, that are Titanosaurs, Dromaeosaurs, and Albertosaurs. And there's also things like another unnamed Megaraptorid. There's also Noasaurids and many different ornithopods. And smaller animals that would have lived with was kind of the same cast of small fish and turtles and birds and pterosaurs that have been known from that formation. That really rounds out that ecosystem. So yeah, really, really awesome. I'm definitely a big fan of this guy. And I gotta love these feathers. I do love that we're getting more feathers, because feathers, I think, just make dinosaurs look so much cooler. These are kind of the old style feathers, but there's a big mod in the works trying to import the feathers from like Pyroraptor and Overraptor and things like that, and try and put them on different species. So I'm really excited to see the developments of that in the future. Just a little tease for the future. But yeah, we're gonna let these Megaraptors walk off and do their thing. But with second to last, we've got a very interesting animal next. Not a dinosaur. We have got Megalania, so a giant monitor lizard. So let's have a look at these guys. So look at these wonderful guys here. Let's have a look. We'll have a look at you, because you're pretty looking. Now we'll have a look at... no, you guys... I want to get one that's like... You're probably the best one to look at, but we'll have a look at Megalania. So Megalania, very interesting animal, not from the Mesozoic. This guy's from the Cenozoic, quite recently actually. So these guys were an extinct species of giant monitor lizards, so a member of Varanus. Their scientific name is Varanus priscus, though they were in Megalania priscus, but that was lumped into Varanus because they are related to other animals within Varanus. These guys are part of a large megafaunal assemblage that lived in Australia during the Pleistocene. So they would have lived with animals like Thylacoleo, Diprotodon, animals and that kind of things like Procoptodon, things like that. So very big marsupials and Quiquelania, which was like a terrestrial crocodile, and some very interesting animals like Gestornis, which was like a giant bird. They're actually the largest terrestrial lizard known to exist, and there's evidence that potentially shows it could get up to about estimated length of about 3.5 to about 7 meters long, so about 11.5 to 23 feet long. But obviously, this is a lot of based on fragmented remains, so it's not 100% certain. And weights have been estimated between 97 and 1,940 kilograms, or 214 to 4,257 pounds, which is basically between like 100 kilos and 2 tons. So there's big estimates. And it was first described in 1859 with 3 vertebrae found in Australia. And it was originally described as Megalania priscus, which means ancient great roamer. But also priscus means, I believe, is to roam. And the close similarity to the Latin word to butcher means ancient giant butcher. So it's kind of was thought to be ancient giant roamer, then it kind of got changed as by people think these words are kind of similar. So ancient giant butcher. But now it's not considered a proper genus because they nestle within Varanus, which includes the modern monitor lizards, so Komodo dragons, lace monitors, Aki monitors, and blackthroats, and things like that. And that's why they considered that. And the recent phylogeny actually shows that Megalania itself was actually its sister taxon, or the species closely related to it is the modern Komodo dragon, which is, a lot of people think that's weird because, they're in Asia, but the ancestors of Komodo dragon actually lived in Australia about 300,000 years ago, and its closest living relative that still lives in Australia is the lace monitor. So still close relatives, that's quite interesting. So in terms of the size, we'll talk about that size. From what we know, let's have a look at this Komodo dragon one to let you show. Really, really cool. So in terms of its size, there's been a lack of complete or nearly complete fossils that really make it hard to estimate their size. But early estimates put them up to about 7 meters and about 600 to 620 kilograms, or about 1,320 to 1,370 pounds. But most recent evidence suggests that they got to at least 5.5 meters, or about 18 feet and 575 kilograms, or about 1,280 pounds. So most recent estimates kind of suggest that they're about the same length of a large saltwater crocodile, and probably weighed a little bit less since they're not quite as big and bulky, probably about a half a ton, or maybe even a little bit more than that. So that's what I'll go from now on. So about... and there have been estimates suggest that they may have got, because of different proportions, things like that, and there's better remains that are getting described, they could potentially get longer, just because they had longer tails, things like that. And if their body plan was very similar to that of a lace monitor, they could potentially get up to 8 meters, because lace monitors have very long tails. But if their proportions are more similar to that of Komodo dragons, a length of about 7 meters would be more likely. And then it's then estimated that if they got to about 7 meters, they'd weigh about... little under 2 tons. But yeah, because of the incomplete remains, we don't really know too much of how big they really would have gotten. But in terms of its paleobiology, these are the largest terrestrial known lizard to ever exist, and judging from its size, they would have been feeding mostly on large animals, very similar to Komodo dragons today, but they would be feeding on things much bigger. They would have been feeding on giant marsupials such as the Diprotodon and Procoptodon, those kind of animals. Thylacoleo may have potentially been on their diet, though they did live in slightly different habitats. Megalania lived in more open areas, while Thylacoleo lived in more closed areas, so in forests. But similar to most other varanids, they would have been on that seafood diet, that seafood and they'll eat it. They would be birds and their eggs, and they have heavily built jaws and limbs and body and a large skull with these bladed-like teeth. And very similar to modern monitor lizards such as Komodo dragons, because they're in the clade Toxicophora, these guys would have had venom. So they wouldn't be able to deliver venom in the same way as a snake would. They would basically just bite into prey, and the venom would be delivered through their teeth. And these guys potentially would have had an anticoagulant venom, which would basically lead their prey to bleed out. and then they would decrease that blood pressure, so they basically go into shock. And if this is true, that would mean that Megalania is probably the largest known venomous vertebrate known, which is pretty cool. And that's another cool thing about these guys. So some scientists even are skeptical that the Megalania was the only kind of large predator in Australia. I mentioned Quicklania and Thylacoleo probably would have competed with these guys in certain areas. And if it was reconstructed, these guys potentially would have had to reconstruct them quite similar to Komodo dragons in the ecosystem. And one thing as well, size estimates and they've even estimated sprinting speeds was basically up to 2.6 to 3 meters or 9 to 10 kilometers an hour. Is kind of their speed, which is actually comparable to freshwater crocodiles. So that's quite interesting. In terms of their extinction, though, these guys lived throughout the Pleistocene and went extinct during the late Pleistocene in the Great Megafaunal Extinction that started about 50, 60,000 years ago, and it's kind of ended about 10,000 years ago. These are remains from the late Pleistocene, and the youngest possible remains is believed to be a large osteoderm, or for those who don't know, osteoderms, most varanus like Komodo dragons, they have osteoderms in their skin. Very little ones, though, that helps basically just reinforce their scales. That's been dated to about 50,000 years ago from central eastern Queensland in a cave up there. And the study also estimated the morphology of 9 closely related that showed that these guys would have been likely not good enough at running away from, or inefficient at running away from early human settlers. So they would have been kind of easy prey for Aborigines that come to kill them. Though they definitely would be able to fight back pretty well, but likely a combination of that, habitat destruction, and also the climate of Australia was changing a lot at that time. Australia was becoming much drier and much more similar than it was today. Australia used to be much wetter, so a lot of those may have been had an effect on their populations and caused them to go extinct. But yeah, really, really cool animals. I do love Megalania. I really love the skin. Megalania was done by Hyper SGYT. So really did a wonderful job there. Hyper SGYT makes some wonderful mods, and really awesome to see. A Komodo dragon one, even though it's a cool skin, I like that the Megalania is not always just reconstructed here as a giant Komodo dragon, because they were very different in their ecology and habitat and things like that. They are closely related though. But yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. So we're going to let them walk off and do their thing. So nice to see Megalania. And nice to see some cenozoic animals. Really, really awesome. Cool, they're already run off. So next up, last but not least, we've got a very interesting dinosaur here today with feathers. This is by Hockowl1215, who's not on the Discord, so this guy kind of came out of nowhere. We have got Utahraptor. So this is a really awesome mod right here. You can see the Qianzhousaurus is coming to take up the frame. He wants the spotlight, but we're going to have a look at him anyway. We've got the wonderful Utahraptor. So Utahraptor, which means Utah thief. These guys are a genus of actually quite large dromaeosaur, so related to Velociraptor, Deinonychus, things like that. They lived in North America during the early Cretaceous, and they were quite heavily built, as we'll get into. And they contain the single species Utahraptor austramainsi, which is named after the scientist or paleontologist John Ostrom, who actually made the connection between dinosaurs and birds, or was quite famous for doing that. Kind of reinvented the dinosaurs from being slow, sluggish lizards to fast, warm-blooded, interesting animals like that. So more bird-like than lizard-like. So that's quite interesting. And as I mentioned, these guys were first founded by Jim Jensen in 1975 in Utah, near Moab. But there's been more fossils being found, especially like James Kirkland and things like that. Typically found more pieces, and that really gave us a better look of how. And then there's also the Utahraptor block, which was discovered, I believe, in kind of 2015 or so, where there's a block of many different age stages of Utahraptor caught in a predator, like a predator trap. So it's really given us a lot of knowledge of how a Utahraptor would have looked. But the type species was named by Kirkland, Gaston, and Burke in June of 1993. So it was named just as Jurassic Park, the first Jurassic Park, came out. And its name Utahraptor obviously refers to the state it was founded in Utah, but Ostromensi is honor of John Ostrom, who investigated the relationship between dinosaurs and birds. And it was actually originally going to be named Utahraptor sternbergi after Steven Spielberg in exchange for funding, but there was no agreement made, so they kind of just decided to name what they want. But yeah, really, really cool. I love Utahraptor. But Utahraptor is actually one of the largest known dromaeosaurs and one of the heaviest, with the signed specimens getting up to about 4.9 meters, or about 16 feet long, and about 1.5 meters tall at the hip, or about 4.9 feet, and about 280 kilograms. And some even suggest that they would have got quite bigger. So some people have suggested like even 6 meters and up to 300 kilograms, or 660 pounds is very likely. But although feathers have never been found directly on Utahraptor, as you can see here, most of its close relatives, pretty much all of its close relatives, had feathers, so it's very likely these guys did as well. And they would have had pennaceous feathers as well, as you can see reconstructed here. They would have feathers very similar to birds, with these wing feathers as well. Basically all types from 1 to 5 they would have had, and you can see on that tail as well, is most of their relatives did. It's very likely these guys had. And I gotta say, I really love how this is kind of the older style of doing feathers, just planes rather than like a actual shader. So it's kind of a more older analog way to do it. It's not the same type of feathers as you see on the Pyroraptor, which are kind of done as a shader. But yeah, really, really cool. I love seeing some more feathered dinosaurs, and really looks nice, as I do think so. But really interesting as well. Some of the adaptations had quite a bit bulkier than most other dromaeosaurs, so it suggests that they had a larger impact in the ecosystem, so more of a top-level predator, so basically the T-Rex of its area, you could say. And then you can see that big bulky head, and they also have a bit of a turned jaw there with these large teeth, so really, really awesome. In terms of its some of its defining characteristics, they have little claws on the hand that are actually more specialized for cutting. And they also have kind of an elongated jaw a little bit, and these larger... And they also have a well-developed notch on the trochanter as well. And they have quite large jaws there, and quite large toes. These dew claws got quite huge. Estimated to be about 24 centimeters long if restored, so very, very big. And in terms of its relation to other dromaeosaurs, these guys are kind of in their group of dromaeosaurians. They're related to Dromaeosaurus and also Achillobeta. So a very interesting animal as well. In terms of its predatory behavior, these guys were very likely preying on large animals. So they would be preying potentially on larger iguanodonts, and would have been fast and sauropodomorphs. They would have been hunting larger animals, and also evidence they would have had much more leg force in order to kill prey, so bigger and bulkier, it being able to better kill bigger things. And even though they weren't particularly fast, they may have been an apex ambush predator to prey on larger animals, such as Dinosaurs, iguanodontians, and sauropods. So they would have been bigger and bulkier, basically like built to be a T-Rex almost of their time. And in terms of social behavior, Mintz did say 2015, but actually in 2001, there was the 9-ton block of also called the Utahraptor block that was found. And it shows that they have an adult that got about 4.8 meters long, or about 16 feet, and juveniles and hatchlings. Hatchling was only about a meter long or so, and also the remains of a possum iguanodont. So this is a predator trap. So it's very similar to things like the La Brea tar pits or the Clevelandoid dinosaur quarry. They would have had a prey animal in there, and then lots of predators come in to scavenge, but they get trapped and obviously die and get preserved. So it's very, very interesting, and that helps us to learn a lot. It's actually still getting excavated to this day. It's taken forever. It's been taken out of the ground, and it's in basically a storage unit, and it's basically been worked on, and people trying to grab as much bones out of it as possible. It's taking forever. And but anyway, in terms of that kind of shows potentially that these guys would have had some social complex behavior, living in social groups, which is something that's been talked about a lot in dinosaurs, which I'm really excited to hope to learn more about that, because the big loner dinosaur thing is kind of something that needs to die. But in terms of where this guy lived in its habitat, they would have lived in the lower part of the Cedar Mountain Formation, and they would have had quite an important role as kind of a major carnivore in that area. So, group hunting individuals of at least 11 feet long could potentially take down pretty big animals, so up to the 2-ton range, even smaller sauropods. Um, and the estimate that these guys would have existed between 130 to 125 million years ago, and that's kind of where that layer of rock has been found to. But it was unearthed from a yellow cat, so these guys would have lived in a semi-arid area with lots of floodplain prairies and riverine habitats and things like that. And during the description of Herrerasaurus, actually found was also a lot of bogs and things like that, which kind of makes sense considering how the Utahraptor block got preserved. But paleofauna, it's actually quite a diverse fauna in there. There's lots of dinosaurs. There's iguanodonts such as Hippodraco and Styracosaurus, and there's also Megaraptor and Neocorbuta, and then there's also Sinusaurus and Wabosaurus, both sauropods. And there's Gastonia, which is a noasaurid. Lived in there, and there's also a mammal there, Coleoptodon, a small mammal. But there's many other animals also known that weren't dinosaurs. There's turtles and fish, and there's also a Rhizocephalian, or an early relative of or a tuatara-like animal named Toxophosaurus as well. There's also some sharks there as well, so that's quite interesting. And Utahraptor also had quite a bit of an impact on our culture. So there was the big claw was found right before Jurassic Park, so basically they thought we're going to make our velociraptors big, and that's kind of way should be called probably Utahraptor deinonychus, but velociraptor apparently sounded cooler. But Raptor Red was also published. That's a book written by the paleontologist Robert T. Barker, which actually talked a lot about this, which is quite cool. And in 2018, it was actually proposed to be a Utah state dinosaur, but they would have replaced Allosaurus, but it was decided it would be another symbol. In 2021, there was the Utahraptor State Park, where the block was discovered, and so that's now a national park, pretty much. So that's really, really cool, or a state park, you could say. Really, really awesome, and I gotta say, Hawk Owl kind of just came out of nowhere and gave us this wonderful mod. I'm a really, really big fan of this Utahraptor, and I love this color of it, and there's lots of different colors you can kind of see here. Like most other JWE things, there's lots of skins and things like that. You can play around with ones you like. But yeah, really, really awesome. So, yeah. I really think this is a great place to end the video. So I really, 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 really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.